I want to share with you four things that I think are extremely important in light of what's going on in our culture today. I'm Alan McCray, founder of Life Impact, and we are here to serve you in any capacity that we can. In light of what's taking place, we're seeing pandemonium throughout our country and even around the world, but specifically here in the United States. So I want to talk to you about four things that most mental health professionals would tell you that are essential for us living life healthy, but in particular, living through any crisis. These four things, and I'm going to elaborate on one of them today, is first of all, that we have to have a solid sense of who we are. I call this a solid sense of self. Knowing our values, our purpose. I'll unpack more of that here in a moment. The second pillar that's essential to our health and strength and courage is the ability to calm ourselves, still ourselves. We have people in pandemonium today who are doing irrational things because they don't know how to calm themselves. The third is to emotionally ground yourself, to be emotionally grounded. We'll talk more about that in a few moments. The fourth one is to sustain purposeful endurance. Now, I don't have time in this little segment to hit on all of those, but I want to talk about what happens when we don't have a strong sense of self. Without a strong sense of self, and I differentiate this between a strong sense of self and self-esteem. Self-esteem is how we feel about ourselves, while a strong sense of self is knowing what we believe about ourselves. That's a big difference. So without a strong sense of self, we tend to allow others to dictate who we are. We even allow the circumstances to dictate our life and what's going on in us. So without a strong sense of self, we depend on external circumstances to give us our identity. So without a strong sense of self, we tend, as we're seeing today, people panic in a time of crisis and go in many different directions. I think everybody's aware of the toilet paper issue in our culture today. Whatever started that, we have no idea. But a strong sense of self becomes reliant on our individual selves and the ability to manage ourself. Doesn't mean we don't need other people. That's not what I mean. But I mean the ability to manage our emotions, to manage ourselves in a time of crisis. So without a solid sense of self, we tend to be people pleasers, and we migrate to get as much attention and affection and affirmation from others as we can, or we distance ourselves from people, and consequently, both of those are positions of weakness. Now, let me just say very quickly, some steps to developing a strong sense of self. Without it, as I said earlier, we are in a position of feeling inferior, feeling hopeless, feeling that we're not enough. But to develop our strong sense of self, your value is not in your performance. Your value is not in the circumstances around you. You don't let your mistakes become your identity. You don't let the situations, your circumstances, become your identity or dictate to you how to behave. I like to use the terminology like this in the culture that we're in right now, is that we live in wisdom, not in fear. We do what we know what to do, but we don't live in pandemonium. We don't allow the spirit of fear to overtake us. Now, going back to more of the personal growth side of this, you have to understand that you are not your mistakes. All of us make mistakes. Our mistakes are not our identity. Mistakes are exactly that. They, by definition, a mistake is something that's outside of our value system. It's outside of who we are. But when we learn to hold on to ourselves, our values, and our worth as human beings is knowing that we are made in the image of God. I don't know any other way to put it. The world cannot give you your identity. The world will always tell you who you're not. Our identity, being created in the image of God, tells us who we are. It tells us who we are, and it tells us who God is in us. If you can't value yourself based on your own self-esteem, then value yourself based on who God is in you. Whether you're a believer or not, you're created in the image of God. He is our creator. I love this verse in Psalms 139. From the Message translation, it says, "Oh yes, you shaped me from my first inside, then out. You formed me in my mother's womb. I thank you. You are breathtaking, body and soul. I am marvelously made." Yes, you are. I worship in adoration. What a creation. You know me inside and out. You know every bone in my body. You know exactly how I was made, bit by bit. I love that. How I was sculptured from nothing to something. Like an open book, you watched me grow from conception to birth. All the stages of my life were spread out before you. The days of my life all prepared before I'd even lived one day. Wow, what a marvelous way of living, to know that we are created in his image and that he knows us. He knows where we are. Even in this pandemonium today, God is not in a panic, and he doesn't want you to be in a panic. He wants you to realize where you came from, who you belong to, and that he has and able to protect us. Now, I don't want to diminish what's going on today whatsoever, but I will tell you, God is going to see us through this, and we're going to be better people and more powerful than we've ever been before. Don't lose your point of view, who you are, how you have viewed the world. Think about how you viewed the world prior to this situation. That's still who you are. Holding on to you, your viewpoints. Don't allow the world around you, particularly the negative media, don't allow it to squeeze you into some mold and cause you to panic or lose yourself or lose your identity or lose your self-agency. Hold on to you. Now, I love this passage again in Romans chapter 12, verse 1. He said, with eyes wide open to the mercies of God, I beg you, my brothers, as an act of intelligent worship, to give up your bodies a living sacrifice, consecrated unto him and acceptable by him. Reading from the Phillips translation. Don't let the world around you squeeze you into its own mold. Wow, how relevant is that to us today? Don't let this world squeeze you into being somebody you're not. Hold on to you. Hold on to your identity. Hold on to your purpose. Hold on to your destiny in God. That's more important than anything else that's going on in this world today. Now, people who develop a strong sense of self have some characteristics, and one is they learn from their mistakes. Now, if we want to grow in our personal life, in our relationship with others, and we have to learn from our mistakes. Now, if you're one of those people that think you have to live life perfectly, let me assure you, none of us are perfect. We're in this human body. The Bible says that we have this treasure in an earthen vessel. meaning that we're going to make mistakes, but mistakes, again, are not your identity. You don't hold on to your mistakes, you hold on to your truth. And your truth is that your priorities, your values, what you know to be true. Now, some things that I know to be true, I know the Bible tells us that God will never leave us nor forsake us. I hold on to that all the time. My wife and I, we're up in our years now. We've been married 56 plus years. There's been many, many times that I've held on to that truth, that he will never leave us nor forsake us. I hold on to that. That's one of my anchor, that he's always with us, no matter what's going on around us. Sharon and I have gone through our own crisis. In fact, personally, we're going through some crisis now. That's of personal nature, but we still hold on to this truth. He will never leave us nor forsake us, always with us. He doesn't always deliver us from things, but he will always take us through things. And when we come through it, we're always better than we were before. The second thing that's important to this process of our personal growth and our relationship development is that we're able to change roles at different times in our lives. We're not always the ones in charge. Sometimes we have to let other people be in charge. Sometimes we're not the one that knows everything. In fact, we'll never know everything, but hope you understand what I mean. But we learn from others. And a solid person with a solid sense of self doesn't always have to be right. I remember working with one of my clients a number of years ago. It was a lady who, in their marriage, were having problems. And one of the statements that she made to me was, I am tired of having to be right. So in her own mind, if she wasn't right, she didn't have a solid sense of self. So people with a solid sense of self don't always have to be right, and they don't fall apart when they're wrong. They're just able to acknowledge their mistakes and correct them and move on. And correction doesn't mean punishing yourself, beating yourself up. That doesn't move any of us up the scale of personal growth and development. Doesn't even help our faith in developing faith. Now, as I already mentioned, another characteristic is allowing other people to be right. That's important in your personal life and in your relationships, is allowing other people to be right and making room for other people in your life. You'll never grow personally on an island by yourselves. God intended for us to be in relationships, all different kinds of relationships. We have our spousal relationships, we have our friend relationships, our family relationships, our co-worker relationships, our neighbor relationships, but we allow other people into our life. Now, maybe you're needing to allow somebody into your life. Maybe you're needing to reach out for some help. Maybe you just need somebody to pray with you, to calm yourself. See, that's the second part of this thing of being strong and courageous, is knowing how to calm ourselves. Now, I can tell you right now, calming yourself won't work if you're listening to news 24 hours a day. You got to take a break, calm yourself. Go to that special place in your imagination. Call a friend. Have somebody just pray with you. Calm yourself. When you're feeling panicky, when you're feeling like such an urgency to do something, to buy all the essentials at the grocery store, have somebody to calm you, pray with you. Calming yourself is an innate requirement that we're supposed to learn even in infancy. But learning to calm ourselves, taking some breaths, we used to say count to 10. Well, 10 deep breaths will help you dramatically. So being able to calm yourself and then ground yourself. Let me just touch on that for a moment. Grounding yourself, realizing, can I just remind you where we live? We live in the United States of America, the greatest country and the greatest world, the greatest culture that the world has ever known. We have freedoms. We may be running out of toilet paper, but we still have electricity coming into our homes. We still have running water. We still have the essentials that we need for life. We've been assured by the authorities that we're not going to run out of food. We're not going to be locked down as you might think we are. Those are just panic statements and people that are speaking out of fear. Can I remind you that we have not been given the spirit of fear, but of a calm mind and a still heart? Hope this has been helpful to you. At Life Impact, we love all of you, and we're thankful for all of our supporters and all the people that have gone through our trainings. We thank you for that. We've got a tremendous tribe of Life Impact people, and we're thankful for every one of them. God bless you, and we'll see you again soon.